If you've been following Europe's tech and telecom debates, you've probably noticed something unusual happening. For years, Huawei equipment quietly powered huge parts of Europe's mobile networks. 5G towers, home routers, core switching gear, the works. It was there, it worked, and nobody talked about it. But suddenly, almost overnight, the European Commission is pushing to rip it all out. Not review it, not test it again. Completely remove and replace it. And the tone is urgent. Country-level fines, political pressure, and the idea that Europe's digital sovereignty depends on pushing Huawei out. Now here's the part that doesn't quite add up. Why is Europe preparing to spend billions removing equipment that its own previous investigations already cleared of deliberate wrongdoing? That contradiction is where this whole story becomes interesting, and it's exactly what we're going to unpack step by step. Before we go deeper, if you find value in this kind of calm, fact-based breakdown, a quick like and share really helps push this video to more people. Thanks, it genuinely makes a difference. So let's start with what actually triggered this wave of bans. The narrative sounds simple. Huawei's equipment allegedly contains backdoors, secret pathways that could let Beijing spy on European communications. If that were proven true, the ban would be a no-brainer. But Europe didn't just rely on headlines. One country went further than anyone else, the United Kingdom. The UK established a dedicated agency, the Huawei Cybersecurity Evaluation Center, or HCSECS. This wasn't a symbolic committee. It was a full technical task force reporting directly to the National Security Advisor. Its job? Reverse engineer Huawei's hardware and software line by line. Tear it apart. Look for hidden instructions, examine the firmware, the compilers, the entire tech stack. Their annual report in March 2019 remains the most comprehensive public investigation ever done on Huawei by any Western government. And the conclusion surprised many people. Yes, Huawei's coding practices weren't perfect. Yes, there were vulnerabilities like you'd find in any large software project. But after years of evaluation, the Oversight Board found no evidence of deliberate backdoors placed for espionage. Not one. This is an important moment to pause. Because the word vulnerabilities can sound scary, especially when mixed with geopolitics. But every device you own, the router at home, your laptop, your smartphone, receives security patches because vulnerabilities are found constantly. That's the normal life cycle of software. If perfect code existed, there would be no updates. Apple, Google, Microsoft, they all pay researchers thousands of dollars for discovering flaws. So Huawei having bugs wasn't unusual, it was expected. But while Huawei was being dismantled and inspected down to the screws, no other vendors supplying Europe faced the same level of scrutiny. European companies didn't. American companies didn't. No extra boards, no reverse engineering labs, nothing. That double standard raises an obvious question. If you're truly worried about hidden backdoors, why inspect only one vendor? Why not test everyone? This question becomes even more relevant when we look at the political layer surrounding the technical findings. Because despite the UK's own investigators confirming there were no intentional backdoors, the US government heavily pressured the UK to ban Huawei anyway. Reports revealed that senior American officials spent hours in high-level meetings, urging the UK to remove Huawei from all networks. They warned of losing cooperation in intelligence, trade, and defense if the UK didn't comply, and eventually the UK agreed. The deadline: remove Huawei equipment by 2027. The cost: an estimated $2 billion, which many experts say could climb to $4 to $5 billion based on how government contracts tend to run over. All to replace equipment that was functioning and had been cleared of intentional espionage tools. This brings us back to the European Union's broader plan under Commissioner Henna Virkkunen to extend a similar rip and replace approach across all member states. Think about the scale. Dozens of countries, thousands of towers, millions of endpoints, and years of integration work. The costs become astronomical, and yet Europe is preparing to move forward even though alternative suppliers have not undergone equivalent security testing. Here's a hook worth thinking about. Europe might spend billions replacing equipment with alternatives that are technically less scrutinized than the Huawei gear being thrown away. That's like removing a car engine after it's passed inspection and replacing it with another engine you never opened the hood on. Some EU officials say this is about sovereignty, about avoiding dependence on a foreign supplier that could be influenced by Beijing. That's a valid concern, but sovereignty decisions should ideally be based on solid evidence, not assumptions or political pressure. And Europe already has a blueprint for evidence-based assessment, the UK's HCSEC model. If the EU truly wants technological independence and transparency, why not subject all vendors, European, American, and Asian, to equal deep-level testing? By the way, I'd love to hear your take on this next point, so drop it in the comments. Do you think Europe's Huawei decision is primarily technical or political? I'm genuinely curious how people see it, especially across different EU countries. Let's continue. One of the misconceptions pushed by media narratives is that Huawei's flaws were somehow uniquely alarming. Headlines often highlighted shady code practices or unacceptable vulnerabilities. But experts who reviewed the reports noted something different. Huawei's issues were messy, not malicious. They reflected legacy systems, rushed development cycles, and inconsistent engineering practices. In other words, the same kinds of problems that exist in many large tech companies, juggling old and new code bases. Meanwhile, the US pressure campaign was not subtle. American officials framed Huawei as a national security threat and expected allies to align with that view. For Europe, this became a geopolitical balancing act. The desire for US partnership versus the need for independent, evidence-based policy. The UK's capitulation showed how powerful that pressure can be, even when the technical findings don't match the political narrative. From an economic perspective, the costs go beyond money. Replacing infrastructure disrupts network performance, delays 5G rollout, increases consumer prices, and ties up engineers who could be working on upgrades instead of removals. Some argue it might stimulate jobs, but that's the same logic as saying breaking all windows creates jobs for glassmakers. It's technically true, but economically irrational. What's striking is how quickly the conversation shifted from "are there backdoors?" to "Huawei's code isn't clean enough," even after no malicious elements were found. It's like starting a crime investigation, finding no crime, and then rewriting the accusation to focus on messy handwriting. This whole saga reveals a deeper truth about cybersecurity. No system is ever perfectly safe. Not Huawei, not Nokia, not Ericsson, not Cisco. Everyone patches, everyone updates, everyone fixes mistakes. The real measure of trust should come from transparency, not nationality. And transparency comes from independent, ongoing testing, not from blanket bans. Europe's challenge now is finding a path forward that maintains security without wasting resources or undermining technological independence. A balanced approach could look like this: independent labs testing all major vendors, transparent reporting, coordinated update policies, and joint standards across the EU. That would strengthen sovereignty far more than replacing one set of flaws with another. As we wrap up, the Huawei case offers a clear lesson. When politics and technology collide, the loudest narrative often wins, even if the facts tell a different story. Europe is about to spend billions on decisions that weren't fully supported by evidence. And the real risk is that after all the money is spent, Europe may end up no safer, just poorer. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more measured, fact-driven analysis of global tech and geopolitics, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It helps the channel grow, and I appreciate you staying until the end. Thanks for watching.